Get the pole in my way. Okay, I'm going to call the Common Council meeting to order. If you could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Michelle, if you could help us with the roll call, please.
Yes, I will. Doug Sloga.
Here.
Jim Barron. Jackie Valdi.
Here.
Wayne Dean.
Here.
Matt Grimmer.
Here.
Phil Kaysen.
Here.
Tim Eicher.
Here.
Ken Atwell.
Present.
Tom Hafner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just wanted to make an announcement that we will be having a closed session, but this time it won't be till the very end of the meeting. So, just so you're aware. Okay, first item on the agenda is City of Delafield citizens' comments. Ed, do you have any citizens' comments you'd like to share?
Yeah.
Come on up. Past mayors get to go first.
Do not touch the microphone, okay? My name's Ed McAleer, 3413 Lake Drive, Heartland. My comments are kind of based on history. And I want to go back to the middle of 1995 when we put our new city administrator, we gave him a task, the Common Council gave him a task to put together a financial policy because up until that point, we didn't have a financial policy. And he came in with one, and I think it's the one you're still using today. And in that policy, it identified 25% as the amount that should be withheld for a rainy day fund. And we tossed it around and everybody on the council liked the number, so we left it in there. But when it was presented as just a document for us to consider, that was really just a placeholder number. It wasn't meant to be the amount that was going to be used for contingency. Well, over the years, it worked. We borrowed against it. We didn't pay it back in like 2000, and we got knocked down a grade on our grade with Moody's. And I took responsibility for that because I was the mayor and I shouldn't have let it happen, and it happened. Anyway, future administrators came in and they got our Moody's rating back up, and we've kept it there. But the question I asked the Common Council last time I was mayor was, do we really need that 25%? Because it's not mandated by statute. It's just really the whim of the council. And that's a nice number. You'd like to have that in your own personal finances, 25% for rainy day fund. But is it realistic? I talked to Dan Brackus 5-6 years ago because he was county executive, and Waukesha County has 15% emergency rainy day fund. And I'm not suggesting that we should have a 15% rainy day fund or that we should have a 20% or 25%, although 20 kind of sticks in my mind. But what I'm asking is that Jackie's proposal to put together a committee or a commission, a professional entity to figure out our finances should include the question of what should the rainy day fund be, and do we really need 25%? Some kind of calculus should be able to show us what percentage is appropriate. And really, if you went from 25 down to 20, I don't know if the rainy day fund is right now, but say it's $1 million. If you went from 25% down to 20%, you got a couple $100,000, if my math is still correct. So anyway, that's all I really had to say about finances, and I think you guys are headed in the right direction. I mean, a referendum would be okay. You find out what the people want to do, but I'm not really in favor of a referendum. I think this is something that you could solve as a common council. The only other comments I wanted to make, I'm on the fire commission, and I've been on the fire commission off and on for 10 or 12 years. I see no reason for optional powers. We have a smooth running organization. The chief handles minor disciplinary actions. If they go past that, or if the police officer involved doesn't accept the recommendation of the chief, then it would come to the full commission. But we've never experienced that. The things get handled internally, and they're minor details, you know, wagging your finger at somebody when you shouldn't have. And I just think we don't need to add another layer of bureaucracy. We don't need to grow city government to the extent that we're going to have another commission with maybe a full-time employee to run it. I just thought I'd throw in my views on that. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you very much. Who would like to be next? Jim, come on up.
Good evening. Jim Zahorik, 1948 West Shore Drive. I'm here to speak also concerning optional powers for the police commission. We've lived in this community for over 30 years, Mary and myself. We've been very pleased with our relationship with the police department, and I've gotten to know all of the police chiefs personally. And they do a wonderful job. And they can handle the day-to-day. I, just like Ed, do not want to see another layer created with the additional time and effort that goes into that. It's not necessary. I know we're going to be discussing the preliminaries on the budget, and that it's been talked about that we may, as a result of the state mandates for our limits, that we can, for our limit on levy, that we may have to let some people go. And if any of those people that are being considered are in the fire or the police departments, I would be very strongly against that. He said, well, we can't afford it. Well, we can't afford to compromise public safety. That's in your hands. Because a decision will be made tonight, possibly, of maybe putting a referendum out there. Many years ago, I authored direct legislation for the city of Delafield to limit our municipal spending on municipal projects to $1 million. If it went above that, you go to referendum. It's worked very well. It's allowed the community to voice their opinion on major expenditures. We're now talking about a levy limit. I'm in concert with Ed as far as I'm sure that we can find other areas in our finances to maintain our present situation, especially for the police and the fire. The way things are occurring right now, with the COVID-19, people out of work, and the way it looks, and I'm not a doom and gloomer, but things are getting serious. We need the police there to protect us. We happen to live in an area, unfortunately, of affluence. And when the haves and the have-nots start getting separated further, you need law and order. You can't compromise in that area. And I'll never listen to the fact that we can't afford it. So, if you can't put it together by making cuts in other areas to keep your current staffing, I would certainly want to consider a referendum, because I don't want to see the fire and the police compromised. That's all I've got to say.
Great, thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Jim.
Who'd like to be next? Merritt, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Daniel, 309 Wisconsin Avenue, and I have a handout. Michelle, I'll give you my speaking points.
Thank you.
I've got enough.
Thanks, Barry. We can pass them down.
Would you? Thanks. So this evening, I would like to speak to one item on your agenda. And as a taxpayer, it was under new business, item F, preliminary discussion regarding the 2021 budget. On the city's website, there is a 2020 approved budget. You will find a City of Delafield 5-year capital improvement packet. So I'm going to be talking to some of the things that are in that packet, and we're talking about items that were moved from projects in 2020 to the 2021 column. One of them was the boat dock for boat access to downtown, $128,000. The last lake welfare meeting during citizens' comments, people who live in that area were not in favor of this. On our city website, under Resources tabs, is a 1993 downtown development plan which addresses a possible boat dock on page 31, which recommends no boat landings should be installed in the, what they refer to as Bay area. They comment that the ramp at the end of Bleecker Street provides adequate landing for downtown Delafield. This study was paid for with taxpayer dollars. We should be using resources that we have paid for in our planning. Some are not relevant, but some are very valid today. One of the other items in that report was public tree planting. For 2021, $22,600. Public tree planting. Does that money come from the Tree Developers Deposit Fund, and is it only used to plant trees? Under annual street improvement program, in 2020, it was moved to 2021 column, the separated path for Genesee Street to Hillcrest, $78,000. With a budget deficit ahead, as a taxpayer, I'm pleading with all of you to not continue spending on capital items except for planting public trees because they take a long time to grow. And not the boat docks and the paths. We can wait until this deficit is solved. I realize there's an operating budget and a capital budget, but in the end, there's a bottom line. Projects in the capital budget still have to be paid for. Citizens' comments sometimes are one-sided, and I wonder, is there a forum for the questions that the taxpayers are asking in a public meeting to have an answer at the following public meeting? I think it would be a way to improve communication and transparency for the taxpayers of the city. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
You'd like to go next? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Eric Hale, and although I don't technically live in the city, sometimes I feel like I reside at 115 Main Street, which is the public safety building. The reason I wanted to come to public comments today is discussion of the potential for a referendum due to budget issues. This seems like an annual discussion that occurs in the city, and I don't think it's going to go away easily. On behalf of my department, I can't speak for the others, but the demands for our services don't decrease year to year. We struggle to meet the demands that the community places on us now. To lose a position or even two would make that even more difficult. I'm not an economist. I do understand the economy's having problems. We're all affected by that. I don't have the answer in regards to the bigger picture, I can talk about the police department, and I can tell you that, and I've outlined over the years the different ways that we need the personnel that we have. It'd be nice to have more. I understand that's not going to happen, so I'm not going to ask for it. But the idea of losing some of the resources, the people that are here that provide those the services that the community demands, is untenable. There has to be some sort of long-term solution, so we're not back here every year. So I'd hope that you would seriously consider the option of a referendum. If the community, the residents decide that, okay, we don't want to make that extra payment, we don't want to support those services, that's fine, but that gives me an answer then to, okay, we have to cut something, and then I have to try to figure out what that will be. Whether it's visiting the schools or some of the services that are not directly law enforcement related, something would have to suffer. I don't know in my personal experience that costs ever actually go down over time, so to expect that to continue to happen on the department level is unreasonable. And I would hope that you would consider an alternate way to address that issue rather than just letting off staff from the city.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Who'd like to be next? Kind of go with whoever's got the, come on up. Susie? Nope. It's good. Basically, unless you're a past mayor, it's first hand up.
Susie Thompson, 700 Milwaukee Street. I have three things I wanted to say. The first one is a big thank you. Tom Hafner and Paul Zellner, as well as Mike Court and Steve Yost with SEH Engineering and our Delafield Police referenced the Oneida Milwaukee Street four-way stop. That went in this past Thursday. It was supposed to be the day before, but we had rain. They got it done, and the difference in what is happening with downtown traffic is amazing. The police were really good at going by a few times because some people weren't paying attention, you know, that it was there, even though they're big orange flags to tell them. But it's been well received. I've talked to neighbors as well as businesses in that area, and everyone's noticed it right away. On my way walking down tonight, two couples that had been to Zinn's said they couldn't believe how nice it was to know that they could walk across the crosswalk and know that people were really going to stop for them. So thank you very much. It's beautifully done, and some other road projects that were done at the same time were also completed really quickly. That's number one. I'll go quicker on the other two. Coming up on number 6B, David Wippert has that flag property that is talking about 1,000 foot to hook up sewer. As a real estate broker, I brought in a copy of the aerial map so you can all see it. I highlighted in yellow so you can see how far that is. There are a lot of trees going, even if you go along the driveway. That is the most expensive sewer connection bill that I have personally ever seen. When we lived in Brookfield 3 years ago, hooking up to sewer was $8,000 to $12,000 per property on Rockway Lane, east and west. I know people that have paid $30,000 and $40,000 for sewer hookups, but to pay over $100,000 is cost prohibitive. Noticing that his property has two flag properties just south of him that I highlighted in pink that are off of Oakwood, those two properties are also still on septic. And according to the guidelines, if the property is sold or every 2 years after 2012, within 10 years you're supposed to go on to city sewer. I understand that, but in the case of flag properties and over 3 acres on the two south of him, or his being just under 6, it seems that as a city we should be able to work out something that some properties can maintain a septic, because let's face it, none of us would pay for replacement of our septic 5 to 10 times at the cost of what it would cost to hook up to city sewer. That just doesn't make economical sense. The third thing I just wanted to say was a thank you to something coming up on the agenda tonight, Delafield ID. Thursdays on the Hill. They're planned for safety and guest. Looks like something that's easier for us as a community to embrace and really support, and easier for our police and for the public to safely attend. So we're all like, yay, there's going to be something happening in Delafield that'll be fun and safe. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Susie. Who'd like to be next? Any other citizens' comments? Seeing no other citizens' comments are now closed. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, the consent agenda. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. 3A, I see there are no licenses. So we'll move to 3B, Planning Commission. Mr. Eicher?
No report since our last meeting. Our next meeting is Wednesday, the 29th in this room.
Great, thank you much. 3C, Lake Welfare Committee.
There are a few things to note. One is, as was mentioned, there was some discussion about the potential boat access downtown for people on the lake. There was also another concern that came up, and this one might be of interest. There is a conservancy area on the north end of the lake that had some clearing. It was permitted by the DNR. It's kind of an interesting conundrum because the islands, bogs that are up there, actually 2 of those are not owned by anybody. It's probably under the regulations of the DNR because it doesn't hit the high water mark. But I was getting comments from both sides, people who live there that actually do have the property rights to clear the areas, particularly of invasive species. But it looks like that was going beyond that. But at the same time, I'd also gotten comments from people on the lake who actually wanted to actually have the grasses and the natural kind of a setting there and not be able to see the houses. It is interesting that it's a conservancy area, and we actually wouldn't have any influence on it unless it was actually developed. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention in case there was anybody that did want to have further conversation about that, but that's where that rests.
Okay.
So that's it.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, 3D, Park and Rec. Mr.
No
Barron.
meeting, no report.
3E, Public Works. Mr. Barron is not here. Tom, anything that we should talk about there?
Nothing significant from last meeting.
All right, we'll refer you to the minutes on that. 3F, Delahart. Mr. Eicher.
No update other than our next meeting is tomorrow night at Delhart.
Okay, 3G, Police Commission. Mr. Sloga?
Yeah, no meeting, no report.
Okay, thank you. 3H, Library Board. Ms. Valdy.
You know we met, and I do have a short summary for you. The library opened its door. It was phase 2 opening on the 6th of July. It's part of the phase reopening response as put forth by the library administration and the library board. Patrons can now pick up their holds in person and browse a curated collection, including items for children, teens, and adults. In this phase, patrons cannot yet access study rooms or computers or the entire building. The new library hours are Monday through Friday, 9:30 a.m. until 1 in person. They still do their curbside pickup from Monday through Friday, 2 to 6, as well as Saturday, 10 to 1. The book drop is also open full hours. You can drop off materials anytime in our outdoor book drop. And there's still time to participate in the all-digital summer reading program. Right now there are 388 people already participating and a lot of adults. Yay us. It's been kind of neat, but our director was very pleased with the number of participants. So just visit the Delafield Library's website, delafieldlibrary.org, and see what's going on. Our next meeting is August 11th, 6:30, right here. Or
Great.
Zoom. We often meet Zoom.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, 3J, Promotion and Tourism. Mr. Barron, he's not here. I know they had a meeting, and believe they have a special meeting to get us some budget information. I think it was this Thursday they're going to have another meeting. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
7:30 in the morning or 6?
Do we skip zoning board of appeals or?
Oh, okay. We'll come back to that one. Thank you. I think it's at
I can check on the time.
6:30 or 7:30 in the morning, just so you're aware. 7:30, okay. I'll go back to 3I, Zoning Board of Appeals. No meeting, no report. It's probably what was in my head. Okay. 3K, Lake Country Fire Commission, no report that I'm aware of. 3L, Lake Country Fire Board, Mr. Grimmer.
No meeting, no report. Next meeting, August 13th, 5 o'clock.
Okay, 3M, Tree Board, Mr. Grimmer.
No meeting, no report.
Okay, 3N, Deer Management Committee, 2 appointments to fill out that committee later on in the meeting. I would think they probably are going to meet next month for the first time. Once there's a date set, we'll publish it. Okay, 4, unfinished business, we have none. 5, Mayor's Report. Discussion possible action to appoint Joe Braun to the Deer Management Committee to serve in the vacant citizen membership position with the term ending 2021. His information is in the packet.
I'll move to approve Joe Brown to Deer Management Committee.
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. All right, 5B, discussion possible action to appoint Jim Marsh to the Deer Management Committee to serve in the vacant citizen member position with the term ending April 2021.
Move to appoint Jim Marsh to Deer Management.
Second.
All righty, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, last one I got is 5C, discussion possible action to appoint Sarah Reardon to the Lake Welfare Committee to serve in the vacant citizen member position with a term ending April 2022. Her information is also in the packet, and she is from one of our cherished districts, District 4.
All right, I'll move to appoint Sarah Reardon to Lake Welfare Committee.
I would second that.
Great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstention.
Abstain? Okay. And opposed? All right. Got that, Michelle? New business. 6A, discussion possible action regarding request from ID Restaurant for approval of a series of upcoming community events that are expected to exceed the Waukesha County large gathering recommendation. Presentation to be made by the representative of ID Restaurant with their plan to provide for appropriate social distancing, hygiene accommodations, and precautionary measures to safely accommodate the proposed large gathering size. Come on up, and if you could state your name and address, that'd be great.
State my business address? Sure.
Just one for the record.
Bailey Fornell, business address 415 Genesee Street. So essentially I'm just kind of here to walk through the bullet points of our safety plan for Thursdays on the Hill. First one would be next Thursday the 30th, and then we would have one a month for the following 3 months, pending that goes well. Essentially we would set up 3 different bars to accommodate between 100 and 150 people. We would have all the social distancing signage set up, as well as places marked outdoors for those proper locations. We will have sanitation stations. I think we're up to 6 planned out, with another 3 that we can place once we kind of get everything set up. Stanchions around the performers to make sure that there isn't any kind of crowding around there. We'll also have signage all over the property, as well as different additional staff to enforce proper distancing. We will be doing all of our food indoors, which falls under our regular health inspector system setups. So we won't be preparing any food outdoors. We'll be doing that all in our own kitchens and serving that kind of carry-out style. Tables wiped down, kind of all of the things that you can expect. Masks will be encouraged to be worn inside the building at any time. Restrooms cleaned every 30 minutes, as well as all the doorways. Anyone have any questions about our safety protocols?
Bailey, you mentioned that staff is going to enforce distancing. How is staff going to enforce distancing? Hi, by the way.
Hi, good to
Nice
see you.
to see you again.
Probably just, a generalized, kind of, again, the band that we hired is the Acoustics. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. They don't draw like the most raucous-y crowd, so I think everyone will probably be pretty respectful as is, but just a gentle reminder. In addition, asking people to leave if they're not being respectful of, what we are hoping to convey. As far as the noise goes, this is like the same group that plays outdoors on the patio at Revere's a couple times a year, and I don't think there's any noise complaints usually from those events, so it should be pretty mild. They've got a good sound, no heavy metal, anything crazy like that. But yeah, we'll just have our staff shirts just saying like, hey, if you guys wouldn't mind breaking it up and going back to your seats, then I'm tougher than I look.
Are people going to the bars to order, or can they order, like, I know in some places you can order online and then it's brought to you? How are you?
We'll have the bars set up that they'll have to order in person. So
Okay.
there'll be like the 6 feet placing,
Gotcha.
being in line. We'll have one down at the bottom of the hill, one at the top of the hill, and then one on the side entry of the building where the handicap entrance is to the building where the restrooms are as well.
Okay.
Yeah, does this take place in the parking lot, to the north of the building, or is it to the west of the building?
So it's
somewhere?
actually the entire north side of the building has a very fairly steep grass hill. And then as you continue east and west, there's more grass and more trees, as well as parking spaces if people were to bring chairs that they could set up. I mean, realistically, you could probably fit 1,000 people there, no problem.
Yeah.
We're shooting for 100, so.
But what about parking though? Will it take a lot of spaces away?
Well, typically on a Saturday night, we could do a wedding of up to about 250 people plus another 200, in the restaurant. So we're not anticipating, there's no event in our event spaces today. So as long as we have, 200 people or less, parking shouldn't be an issue.
No, because the gym will be closed.
What's that?
The gym will be shut.
Yep, the gym will be closed, and then also Modern Hire, the business right behind there, they're still primarily work from home, so there wouldn't even be residual after work parking for them as well.
So how do you enforce the 150 people? Are there plans to turn away people if you get too busy?
Yeah, I think our plan would be we're going to do a Facebook event, see how many people are interested, and if it starts to tick up to a number that we're not comfortable with, that's where we would probably be having, saying like the grass is full, come back next week, and we would, for further events, we would probably look into having the space itself fenced.
So for the record, what number are you not comfortable with?
Probably anything over 150 people. That's kind of our cap that we're shooting for. And that's also coming in and out of the building. I'm sure some people will be dining, in the building before, maybe coming out for an hour and heading back in. But that's kind of our goal. We haven't promoted it yet, giving us 10 days to do so. So I don't think it's going to necessarily catch on like wildfire the first time, and we'll kind of see what the response is from there.
But there's not an RSVP process or a registration process.
Correct, and that's,
essentially open.
Right, yes, it would be, think block party, but much smaller scale. Same thing with the food, there's only going to be 3 items available for purchase, so it's not necessarily drawing a large crowd. And in the future, if we needed to fence in that space, that's something that we're kind of prepared to do.
So, practical question, if things seem like they were way busier than you imagined, and you weren't able to just dissuade people from coming and say, let's leave, you'd be prepared to make an announcement, say we're shutting it down?
Yeah, tell the band that they gotta stop.
And that's the last thing I want. And
Sure.
I love a raucous crowd too, if you can keep it. But I just for what it's worth, I don't know if, I didn't go personally. I don't know if anyone went to the Heartland Dancing in the Streets, I think they call it, or street dance
The
or something.
street dance, I did hear there was a pretty small turnout.
Yeah, and
this year.
from the pictures, it looked like people had their wits about them and respected what was dictated to them for rules. So I trust you guys will do the same. So I think this is great. We need something to help people get outside and enjoy what we're used to enjoying. So.
Yeah.
Wait, what were the times? Was it? Oh, 5 to 9. I got it. 5
Yeah,
to
so
9.
music would be 6 to 9. We're saying it starts at 5 to give people an opportunity to kind of get their space down and put their blanket on the grass, all that good stuff.
How do you anticipate promoting it? Just getting the word out?
We're going to do an email blast to our regular email list that we send out all of our restaurant and hotel events to. Then we'll do a Facebook event too, which we typically have a decent amount of Facebook followers, maybe something promoted on Instagram for the next one, probably not this time. And we usually do, get a decent response from that, just kind of it flying in front of people's faces on social media.
It looked like you had tables that were going to be set up. Is that, did I read
There won't
that?
be any, I mean,
Okay,
the
just-
tables will just be for the bar. So we'll
Okay.
have, the beer cans at,
Okay.
in a cooler, and then the tables will be where the staff is to make sure that they're also appropriately distanced from anyone who's ordering and paying.
Okay, thank you.
Have you guys ever did this in the past, or is this the first time you've done this?
This will be the first time we've done this. We've obviously done a lot of other events,
Yep.
but nothing outdoors in, kind of this element.
Well, I, for one, am glad that you're doing it. I'm glad you've thought in advance and come prepared to answer all the questions, and we definitely need to have safe activities like this. Just one comment on the logistics. I know the band, based on the map, is off of Pamela Street, but there are two ways to kind of get in there that's very close. Maybe you just want to have a couple barricades there so people don't try to maybe turn around
Sure.
where the band is parked, just a thought.
Yeah, so the band itself will actually be in what is the parking lot.
Yes.
So we'll probably just do traffic cones behind that.
Right,
No parking
right,
behind there.
right.
Then we'll have the stanchions in front of the band to make sure that everyone knows they can't really walk in that space either.
Yeah, great.
So, Mayor, is this something that they're required to have a permit for?
Yeah, so-
And that's why it came to us, because based on our last talks, because it exceeds what the county has as a
Exactly.
baseline recommendation?
They're pulling a special event permit, right? Just like other people have pulled special events, the Chamber, the Delafield Lions, et cetera. And the council direction is we want to follow the county guidelines, which are currently at 100. But if somebody could demonstrate to us that they were going to do an event under a special event safely, then they needed to come to the council, and that's the process we're following.
And my understanding of those county guidelines is they don't distinguish between an indoor event and an outdoor event.
They do not.
And so, given that this is an outdoor event, I feel comfortable supporting it, up to around 150, for obvious reasons.
Okay. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve ID Restaurant series of upcoming events.
I approve. I second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
That was an awful motion.
Yeah, would all four have to be approved at the same time? No.
You are approved.
Correct.
Maybe we need clarity in the motion, but I believe the intent was to improve all four.
Four, yeah.
I'll move to approve, I'll clarify my motion that I'm moving to approve all 4 events as indicated in the packet.
Yeah, I'll maintain my second.
Thank you, Mr. Riker.
Good suggestion.
At
Thank
what
you.
point would we look at it and just reevaluate, how well the first one went, the second? Obviously as they go on,
Yeah.
people are
You should
hankering.
come.
Yeah, people are hankering for something to do, there's no question. So
Right.
it'd be great if everybody could come, but that's not great. So
Yeah.
at what point do
I
we-
mean, Tom can answer, but I would assume if Tom gets complaints or hears issues from the police chief or something, then we'd bring them back, but.
Well, if the county guidelines change, I would expect that there would be an accommodation to meet the county guideline changes.
Sure.
The county guidelines can go up or down, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I guess the question is, we can revisit a permit at
Anytime.
approval at any time, based
So
on what the temperature is at the moment, correct, or no?
Well, if you're making a motion approving all 4 events, I would say no. You could make a motion saying that your approval is contingent upon the county guidelines not changing or not decreasing from where they currently are. And if they do decrease, that you'd want them to come back?
I don't know. I'm good with where it is.
I'm good with where it is, knowing that ID and the Hendricks Group are good public citizens interested in individual liberty and social responsibility.
There we go.
Well said, here.
And I'll also add that ID is interested in the possibility that if this goes well, that this might become part of their normal business in future years. And then their direction for that would be to come to Plan Commission and get it approved as part of their business plan of operation for their normal business at that point.
Sure. So we've got skin in the game to make it go well.
Yep.
All right.
Alrighty. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank
I'm looking
you all.
forward to going.
Good luck.
See you next
See you all
Thursday.
next Thursday.
All right, 6B, discussion possible action to consider providing exception to the mandatory sewer connection requirement of section 50-4D3 of the City of Delafield Municipal Code due to hardship involved with the length of the connection or other factors that would make the connection to be not financially feasible, as requested by David Whippert, 2480 Nagawicka Road, and Alderperson Saloga. Dave, you want to come on up?
And
Give us
let me
your-
just, you want me to just introduce this real quick?
Sure.
So, Dave and his real estate agent in the last week or so have been contacting me about getting a variance for the city's mandatory sewer connection requirement that's in our code. My response was, there is no variance. What the Common Council put into the code in 2012 states that any properties that are adjacent to an existing sewer are required to connect. It did at the time allow those properties an exception for up to 10 years if they had a good working septic system and they got certification from the county every 2 years that it was good working. But again, that expires after 10 years or in 2022, or it can expire earlier if the property is sold, it expires, and then connection's required within a year, or if there is renovation done to the property that would require reconstruction or increasing the size of the septic system. So there is no opportunity in the current council or in the current code for council or staff to provide any kind of variance from the requirements. Mr. Whippert is here. You can see the map that Susie Thompson passed out where his property is, I think it's about 1,000 feet away from the sanitary sewer. Looking at a connection that would cost about $100,000, probably not financially feasible. And so the request is the council open to some kind of variance based on financial hardship? And if so, we would look for direction from the council where staff could take that back, write up an ordinance and bring it back next time.
Which is basically modifying the existing code to allow for the variance or exception.
And the only consideration for modifying the code which would be within the parameters of financial hardship? Or,
that's the discussion, is you want to write in something that...
because your financial hardship might be very different than mine.
Absolutely.
And the size of the property or whatever, whether
Yes.
there's a condo units or whether it's a single residential property, these are all factors that have to be figured into whatever wording you come up with.
So what's the catalyst for this being in front of us right now? The subject property is up for sale, going to be marketed, and this is an obstacle saying that this is onerous. It's like, who's going to buy this knowing they get a chip in $100,000 in 2 years?
I'm not sure that's how it went, but can you help us with the background?
Pretty much.
You need to speak into the mic and name and address. Sorry.
Oh, David Whippert, 2480 Nagawicka Road.
David, you're going to have to get closer.
Closer?
Yeah.
Okay. David Whippert, 2480 Nagawicka Road. So, yeah, some of that is true. With intentions of moving in there. Now the plans. I bought the property 11 months ago. 11 months ago.
And this was disclosed during the sale?
So there's no surprises. I knew I was going to have to do it. It came up at closing. They were scrambling, and they put some costs to it at about $25,000 to $35,000. And I knew, okay, I would have to do it. So my brother and I have been working on this property around the clock, and things have changed with my wife's business being shut down and so on and so forth. So one of the properties has to go, and this is the one. So basically, I had Hare come out and give me a quote. The initial quote was $52,000. After digging into it a little farther, after speaking with Tom and some other people, DPW, there's no connection at the road, or no, I don't know the technical term, but there's no stub at the road. So then Hare told me that. So after talking to, and then they said, well, That'll change things. So they re-quoted it, and then it was 114,000. So it over doubled. Because apparently they looked at the as-built, and it's 20 feet down, underwater. So now the cost spiraled out of control. So that's where we're at.
And so there's a technically, well, not technically, but according to the law, based on the fact you bought it 11 months ago, you're supposed to have a new sewer connection in the next month or two. Like that's the letter of the law. I mean, it's not that we've caught every one of these. There's been other transactions that have occurred that I'm aware of where properties changed hands and notice has been given years later that someone's not in compliance, usually because of some other incident where there's a discovery about the property or inquiry. But what I can just say off recollection, it was probably 8 or 9 years ago. We had a property on Hirschman Lane that was seeking a building permit, and I believe that it was recommended that the septic capacity wasn't capable, like should be upgraded, but they disputed that based on the size and apparently I can't remember what it was, but I'm just saying that there was precedent at that time, and it's after the 2012 ordinance, if I remember correctly, that we waived the necessity for them to connect due to a similar situation where it just seemed like it wasn't practical to make the upgrade because they had a fully functioning, in good condition septic system at the time.
I may be mistaken, but I believe St. John's Military also took down a house that they had on their property just north of their football field because of the fact they had to put in septic and they weren't going to pay it. It was probably 600, 700, 800 feet off the road, and they just decided to take the house down because the opposite situation. I maybe don't have all the facts on that one, but I certainly can appreciate trying to make this, something in the code. And not to split hairs, but Tom, what, I don't know if you know exactly, you had said when there's an adjacent sewer, what would define adjacent? Because 1,000 feet, I mean, he's got a flagged property.
If the property abuts the road that the sewer's in.
Okay, thank you.
So I just have a general question, maybe you know the answer to this. I mean, when the sewer is laid, did they stub for every property with the assumption that they would hook up, or is the stubbing always part of the cost? Do we know the answer to that? I don't know.
So typically when you put a sewer in, you try to anticipate where connections will be required. But that was done in 1980, and since then we've had land divisions or other CSMs, and certain properties are built perhaps in locations not expected and whatnot. So the answer is yes, they do try to anticipate that, but it's not at all uncommon for there to be properties that don't have a stub connection available for them.
So I totally, anyone who's had any experience in digging into the history of Lake Nagawicca understands why this is such a vital piece of our code. It's what cleaned up the lake. I mean,
absolutely.
And so I'm really reluctant to make exceptions to this, but I think we should try to come up with something for these extreme circumstances, in my opinion. Is it within our rights, because this code, I'm not trying to kick the can down the road, but just buy a little bit of time to see what might be a reasonable solution for properties like this, determine how many there are, and maybe say that we're gonna waive this till 2022, until it would absolutely expire for any properties of the similar kind, and try to work on an ordinance that might seem palatable, or at least give definition to people in a circumstance they're trying to sell it or expand, or expand or whatever. Because I can't imagine there's not hundreds of these. There might be a dozen or two, is my guess.
Yeah, and so we've already started that process of using our geographical information system. We've taken our sewer invoice records, matching that with our sewer inventory map to try to identify these properties that have access to sewer but are not currently connected. So we will have that information shortly. But with regards to addressing the current situation, I just don't see in the code, there's nothing in there that gives anybody the authority to provide an exception.
Well, to Tim's point, you said you had some history where something was passed in the
Yeah.
past for a
We-
specific property. How was that?
I think we'd have to research that to
I'll look it
understand the
up.
facts.
Wasn't it like 2013? I think it was my early days on council, I remember something, but I couldn't, yeah, I'd have to look it up.
Maybe it's 2011. I don't know. I've been here too long.
And it wouldn't be
But
the first time that we've perhaps done something wrong in the past, and then,
That
Yeah,
doesn't
we
mean
can't-
we should
I knew that
repeat
was the
it.
answer to this comment.
If we need
So
to make an
regardless of what was done in the-
exception, we should do it the right way.
Yes, thank you.
Well, and when I had the conversation with Tom and Dave, because this is new to me, I think I was introduced this about a week ago myself, and to Tom's point, I thought everybody on the city was on sewer. I didn't know there's many exceptions, and it'll be interesting to see when you come back with what exceptions you do have. But this property, I know because I live very close to it. Literally, it is a flagpole. He's got a driveway that goes 1,000 yards up a hill, and the other thing that really struck me is the fact that there's not a T there, there's not a stub, which is almost half the cost of the improvement, which technically, you know, the city probably should have put one in back in the day. I don't think there's ever been a change in this property since the mid-90s. But, so to me, and then I was talking to Tom, in order to make it happen, we'd have to have a reasonable exception. Well, then what is reasonable, and how would that be defined? I mean, in this case, you could say, you know, 1,000-foot flagpole without a stub is a reasonable exception, but is that a definable event in the code?
Yeah, well then, can you integrate that into the code instead of a price point?
Yeah,
I like the
distance,
distance.
area,
Distance,
Distance
zoning.
and
Because,
acreage of lot.
you know, 20 years from now, $100,000 might feel like 50
Yeah.
in today's dollars.
you know, why don't you let us compile this information that we're putting together, then we'll get a feel for the distances and the areas of lots, and maybe we can come up with some wording that might apply to 4 or 5 properties in the city, and that would be it.
I think that would be prudent, you know, because there should be some logical and fair way to look at a handful of these lots and do it equitably. And I agree with Matt, coming up with a dollar point doesn't make sense. So maybe distance or whatever.
Distance and distance from the lake. No, it's about 2,000 feet away from the lake, so.
What are the timeframes of, Mr. Whipper? I mean, what's your personal situation as far as
I'd like to get
timeframes?
it listed as soon as possible, so I'm not paying 2 mortgages, but it is what it is at this point. I'm stuck.
Well, you know, for budget purposes, I'm going to be asking the council to meet again in 2 weeks. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, and I believe we would be able to have something put together by then on this issue as well.
I'm fine with that.
It'd be nice if we had a list of the properties that aren't sewered, and then whatever proposed delineation there is for distance and acreage, maybe, for the lot. How gray a line we're drawing, like how, like, are we marginally meeting certain people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like somebody's just in and somebody's just
I don't
out.
think you should be rewarded for having a flag lot, but this is all of these things weren't considered when these different ordinances were passed.
Okay. Anybody else have a discussion point on this?
Yeah, I think that you also should look at, this could perhaps fall under the Community Development Authority, because the purpose was to eliminate and prevent substandard and unsanitary areas within the city and promote housing in the city and encourage growth of the tax base and increase and stimulate investment capital in the city. So this particular situation falls right under the domain of the Community Development Authority. Perhaps we can look into that, as far as maybe that might be the body that would approve these type of issues in the future.
Well, ultimately, they could only advise the Common Council on a code
Perhaps
change.
it could. It seems like that falls under their domain.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming. We'll
right,
probably
thank
see you in a couple weeks, we hope.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to 6C, discussion possible action as requested by Alderperson Valdy regarding recent clear cutting of Bleecker Street Boat Launch and along the shore of the Bark River near the fish hatchery building, and consideration of putting up signage or explanation. Jackie.
Yeah. Fair warning, this is sort of what I'm asking for, or an explanation. And I'll start, there are two separate things. Bleecker Street Boat Launch. Oh, thanks, Mike. If you want to go to page 47 on the e-packet, it's actually just like the third page of that brochure. Yeah, it talks about shoreline habitat, and there were a couple of concerns that came up, and I thought, well, I am the kind of person who will ask a question, and believe it or not, on occasion I am willing to recognize that I can be wrong, or I don't know the whole story. So when I'm a regular kayaker, and I love that kayak launch. And so I go out there, and one day there were a few things down, and then like a few days later, like everything seemed to have been removed except for a little maple tree, probably not much bigger than my arm. And I wasn't sure why. I noticed things, this packet from the DNR, I put up there mostly because actually if you look at it's actually page 48 in your e-packet, bottom, it just says landscaping that's unfriendly to fish and wildlife. What bothered me was there was this area that maybe will be planted, and there may have been invasives. Had there been some signage like, it's going to be beautiful, and, or we're planting native plants, but there was just nothing there. And I'm familiar enough with the area that it bothered me. And it bothered me from an environmental point of view in that the semi-dead down tree, or some of the cattails or the wild irises that I admired growing there that were all gone, actually are food sources, and they are shelter for the trees that hang over or look a little messy, actually are what wildlife needs. So we take a pretty flourishing area, ecologically speaking, and we make it look pretty dead, but it's also not real functional. Leaving those areas barren also then just fast tracks. We have had these heavy rains, and that water's just going to fly down through the parking lot, down the muck, right into the water, and it's not a pretty thing. Now, for the first time this summer, was the first time that I've ever seen goose poop on the kayak launch. I've never seen it there. And that's one of the things that happens when we open it all up. To a human eye, maybe it all up, we can see the lake, isn't that lovely? And a goose, which is a grazer, says, wow, look at that open area. I can go up there, it's safe. When they can't see what's on the behind the weeds that might be growing, they don't go up there. So it made me nervous. My question is not to give an environmental lecture, even though I just did, is to more ask, is there a way to let people know what we're doing as a city? A simple sign saying, hey, over at the fish hatchery, we have some water that's pooling. We don't want to damage this beautiful building, so we're doing a ditch grid system to flow into the river. Just like, this is what we're doing, and maybe 80% of the people walking by don't care, but then you'll get people like me who'll go, oh, okay, I get that. And that's really, it was just two instances where I saw stuff that the city, and I know people work hard, and I know they're thoughtful, and the people who are doing the work know the objective. But then there are those of us that don't. And so my request, or it is not an action item, it just says possible, more discussion. Like, is there a way to do that simply? And so that folks can know, like even go to the city's website, we'll explain what we're doing, or something like that, when we have these in process things.
Maybe like a little sign that says, rehabilitation started.
There, something just that simple, and then I can go, whoa, what kind? And go to the website like, ding, we're planting native species only, or the, whatever it was, the buckthorn was so thick, we had to get pretty, radical. I mean, I see, prairies burned for, they're purposeful, and I still struggle with that. Yeah, I really do. So, like I said, I'm not saying I'm right all the time, but I think it would help folks understand what we're doing. And that was my ask. It's just something that simple we could put up saying this, check the website for information on what we're doing here.
I hate signs. I mean, the boat launch has got 80 signs in it already. I respect the work that was done. I was concerned when you brought this up, and I drove over there, and I'm like, this looks really nice. It's a very utilitarian space, and there's mulch that they put in. The integrity of the shoreline seemed fine to me. I'd let people's curiosity lead them toward asking the questions of City Hall and staff if they're that interested. All the work that went on in the Bark River with the cutting down of the buckthorns and the volunteers, and that there was no signs up there saying what was going on, and everyone just raves about how well that's all turned out. I'd be more inclined to let the guys do their job and not put up signage explaining what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone raves and everyone likes it. I care, but I think more to the point, the Bleecker Street boat launch is a utilitarian spot. I am there 2-3 times a week using it, so I get that. But it was perfectly functional before everything was cut down. And nothing was impeding people's access to either the kayak or the boat launch, essentially. I don't want to have an argument about what people think or how they like it, or whether or not we get the most calls, either complaining about the clear cutting or loving it. Not the point. The point is what's the best thing to do there? And I don't really like signs, but we could put it up, a little thing right near where all the other signage is, like this is a watershed. And looking at invasives, and what's, just even things that are on the website. It bothers me deeply, obviously. That's why I asked for it to be brought up.
I'm not saying that it's not appropriate to have a sign. I don't want to micromanage the DPW guys doing their job, and they're very efficient, and they maintain the rain garden at the end of Oakwood Park. They put that in, I'm sure, when that was at I think it's Oakwood Street.
Oak Street?
Oak Street.
Oak Street
I'll get it
Park.
right.
Yeah, I was going to say Oak.
So but
Yeah, we have a few.
and the work they've done maintaining the fish hatchery pond and all these other things, they're some of the most conscientious environmentalists I know. But yeah, a sign, like if there was a sign that gets moved from work site to work site that says, "Look here for information," I guess that's okay. If it's like a temporary minute work kind of sign, makes sense.
Okay. Are we good to move on?
Yeah, I can pull this back and maybe look at what might be options that we can consider moving forward.
Great, sounds good. Okay, 6E, discussion and possible action as requested by Alderperson Dean regarding optional powers for the police commission.
You skipped D.
Oh, did I miss one?
You're tired of me.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I got Jackie twice. Discussion and possible action as requested by Alderperson Valdy regarding the formation of a committee of independent experts to advise the city on the current budget situation, and that the city pause all expenditures beyond personnel and legal obligated expenses until a report from the committee is publicly submitted and discussed, and from the report the city base its actions. Ms. Valdy.
That's quite a mouthful. These are not conventional times. There have always been times, I think, throughout history, especially with budgets, that can be challenging or not. What I'm asking is that we, as a city, consider, 2 actions. One is pressing pause, and the reason I think is sitting in a room with blue tape and businesses being challenged and lives being put on pause, and necessarily so. I was trying to come up with something beyond a philosophical argument. I think it's asking for practicality in how we're functioning. We had a budget, we voted on it. We voted on it before everything changed. And to ignore that fact and continuing moving forward, I think is problematic and a little bit dangerous. So I guess I'm asking us to, I don't guess, I am asking us to consider pressing that pause button for a legitimate reason, and that is to take stock and look at what would be recommended. Now, how would we do that? I would suggest that we consult the League of Municipalities. I would like us to be ahead of other communities. I often say, well, let's look at other communities around us, and I guess we could, but I don't know that if nobody else is asking this question that we shouldn't. So I would start there to look for folks who would be able to advise us on what makes sense regarding situations like this. An analogy that comes to mind in my head is, now, okay, I teach personal finance, so I'll just disclose that right now, but like you get a credit card and you get a spending limit. That's not a target. Like some people, especially inexperienced with finances, have a spending limit. I have a $20,000 spending limit on this card, so, well, I have that, so I'm going to spend it. Or we approve the money, so let's spend it. I understand we have obligations, but in these times, I think some of the spending needs to stop, and that we do the necessary spending and nothing else until we have a better sense of direction. We don't even know what our tax bases are. We don't have a sense of the direction, and yet we're still moving forward. And it makes me nervous, very nervous. I know we're going to have a meeting, or in our meeting, we're going to talk about budget stuff, and it's interesting to me that this isn't part of it. Or maybe it is, I don't know. So I'm hoping someone wants to talk.
What unnecessary spending did we approve last year?
I would not call anything unnecessary. I'm talking about, like our paths or anything beyond salaries. So paying the bills, keeping the lights on. That would not be my purview. That's why I would suggest we would talk to maybe some experts who can look at how we might function, or everything is great and I should start singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
I like where it's coming from, the discussion, and obviously we have the budget discussion as well. And so I think, your head and your heart is in the right place, and I agree with 90% of what you're saying. I guess when it comes to an independent council of experts, we're the elected officials. That's what we pay Tom for. That's what you elect the mayor for, and that's what we have just hired a new finance, what's her name?
Amy Buchanan.
Amy, that's why we hired Amy. And so I would feel comfortable in that, in that group of individuals advising this council. But within the spirit of your item here, reaching out to other people within the community to come up and give public comment is not unreasonable.
I would reiterate that the financial times are really questionable, considering we've lost a lot in the hotel tax. I don't know what that dollar amount is. Being new to the Common Council, I'm not sure exactly how much that would weigh in and change things for us, but there's a lot of unknowns, and I know I've been eager to try and get at that information too, so I'm just eager to start that conversation, and if if it comes to it later on, discussing bringing in additional sources to evaluate it. I know Tom has been busy with a lot of other things going on this year too, and I'm just eager to get going on it, just so we know, so we can plan ahead, because it's going to be hard planning. It's going to be a lot of guessing, I think.
Are you making a motion, or you just want a discussion?
I was not making a motion.
Okay.
Do you want me to make a motion?
I'd kind of like to wait until we have more,
I can't really
after
understand you,
the,
I'm
item
sorry.
number F, after we discuss the budget again, and if it's something we need to add on our, we're having another meeting in 2 weeks. So I'd like to get more information about where we are in the budget, and then if I'm
Okay.
not satisfied, then I'll,
So maybe we'll set it aside until, for 2 weeks?
You know, Jackie, it's really important to talk about, are we talking about operations or are we talking about capital? It's a major distinction that does need to be made because the city does not have a problem with capital spending. The city has a problem with operating spending. Probably about 80% of our operating spending is personnel. So if you want to have this conversation and if you want to talk about being proactive, the way to do that would be personnel cuts because everything else has been skimmed significantly, and we talk about only moving forward with personnel costs and legally obligated expenses. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean we're not going to buy fuel for our vehicles, or we're not going to buy ammunition for our cops? And I mean, because that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, and there's just not much there. It's almost exclusively personnel if you want to make any kind of dent.
Right, I get you. I just, again, I know that there's a distinction between the capital and it's often brought up. It's frustrating because it's all money and obligations that we are making. So it's very hard to explain to taxpayers that we don't have any money to pay for our police officers, but we can create, you know, a boat dock or a path or something, and to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whatever it is, I'm not picking on any specific project. I'm thinking theoretically. As taxpayers, and we're all taxpayers here, it's hard. It doesn't sit right, you know. And we can say those are two separate things, and we're only paying on this, you know, bike path or this whatever it is, capital project or item, and we only pay a part of it every so often, so it's spread out over time, which is why we can afford it, and we have to pay salaries or.
But that's not the reason we can afford it. The reason we can afford it is because the state doesn't limit us on capital spending, no limit, and they significantly limited us on operating spending.
But just because they don't limit us doesn't mean we shouldn't limit us.
So that's a different discussion about can we afford it versus, you know,
Should we afford it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think.
Well, theoretically, if we suspended our capital, $100,000 in capital projects, what would that save us on operating? $1,000 a year?
On operating?
Yeah.
All it
The
would
interest
save-
that we would not
Nothing
pay.
right now.
All it would save us is the future maintenance of that capital improvement.
Right.
If you put in a path, we've got to shovel it and whatnot, right? And repair the potholes that show up. But nothing right now.
Right.
So it's really important that the community understand we have an operating budget problem, just like Tom said, and we can't repeat it enough.
No.
80% of that operating budget is payroll. That's what we're capped on. That's where we run our deficit.
So, yeah, I mean, and this may be a discussion we carry on, but I think it's an important one because the people make the city, and, you know, I would have, well, you know I do. I have huge problems with talking about cutting personnel. But yeah, so I think it needs to be something that we discuss, and
We're not leasing a Ferrari and not putting food on the table, you know what I mean? But one versus the other doesn't, the situation we're in is not we can't reconcile it by big cuts in capital spending. And it's frustrating because it is an optics problem where people say, well, why would we have to, couldn't we pay for 2 police officers indefinitely for the $400,000 path that winter? It doesn't work that way. We are siloed by design by our state government. And our state government has, in the past, every year over the past decade, it's gotten worse as far as the type of control and flexibility we have over on local budgeting. Regardless of what party's in control, it's gotten worse locally. And we have to deal with it. And that's leading into our upcoming agenda item.
Yes.
I mean,
we're almost starting to merge the two.
So this will be,
where I took
think-
issue in saying unnecessary spending, I mean, we were talking about not buying a garbage can for the corner up here in our budget meeting to take that out of the operating budget. We voluntarily kicked in, $700 a piece out of our own salaries to help offset some of the impact on other employees. I mean, we're down into the weeds.
The deep
There's
weeds.
nothing else there.
Yeah.
As far as what we deemed non-essential, and that was
Cutting
a term
park
we
and
weren't
rec.
thinking about a year ago.
Cutting goose oiling.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
We even discussed, I'm sorry, Tim.
So it is difficult to say, well, this road just went into cost $500,000. If we don't pay for that now, we pay for it later, and it's not going to get cheaper later. But it doesn't impact our operating budget where our hands are tied based on state legislation, and where we've acted extremely responsible and conservative over the past decade in only spending what we needed to day to day to day. Shame on us for not overspending because we'd have more money today. But we did the right thing then, and we're faced with a situation where we're going to put it to people perhaps to make a decision of, we'll talk about it with the referendum question.
Yeah, and I would certainly encourage the Common Council, of course, not to do any capital projects that we don't think are worthwhile, but for those capital projects that we think are good for this community and worthwhile, we're going to be talking about the borrowing that the city went through, and I mean, there's no better time than right now to do those projects because of the reduced cost of borrowing that we're seeing.
Jackie, you good to let us move on, or you?
Well, yeah, I think we need to, but I think we need to continue discussion.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll continue.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, 6E, discussion and possible action as requested by Alderman Dean regarding optional powers for the police commission as provided for in Wisconsin State Statute 62.13, pertaining to more powers that can be given to the police commission in the day-to-day operations of the police department. Mr. Dean.
In keeping with proper parliamentary procedure, I move to postpone discussion on this until the September 21st, 2020 meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Do you guys want to come back, or you guys want to share your thoughts now? I'm willing to go either way, whatever you guys prefer.
I'm sorry, you have a motion before you that was made and seconded.
To postpone it? Okay,
Yes.
Okay, got it, makes sense.
But
Okay.
does that fall within discussion?
Well, they were going to come up to talk about the project. They came here to talk about it. I told them to hold off from citizens' comments until it came up, but now it's postponed. So if there's a motion and a second, then to postpone it, then we won't have them talk. So Mr. Dean's correct.
We still need a vote.
Yep. Okay, so is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, hopefully leading into this, we find out what's broken that needs fixing. That's all I gotta say.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes, great. So we'll have you guys come next time. All right, 6F, preliminary discussion regarding the 2021 budget.
Yeah, I kind of want to merge F and G kind of together. In your packet, there is a memo. We do not have a preliminary budget at this time. We're still pulling together a lot of information. Looking forward to getting our equalized value from the state. We'll get a preliminary number on August 1st, final number on August 15th. We need that to understand what our levy limit's going to be. We're still looking for feedback from our tourism council. Preliminary feedback so far is that they do still anticipate that they'll be able to make the payments to the city in 2020 that they budgeted. They budgeted a $41,000 contribution towards debt service related to trails this year, and a $104,000 contribution towards other tourism-related activities in the city's budget. They're not going to have revenues this year to fund that. It's going to take a significant chunk out of their fund balance. They understand that. It's likely that they will not be able to make any contributions to the city in the 2021 budget, which increases the deficit that we are dealing with. There is some positive news through some mergers with fire departments. It's looking like our contribution towards fire is going to be about $60,000 less next year than it was this year. So we're still finalizing those numbers with the fire department. But all I want to ask the council tonight is to meet the first Monday of August. That wasn't a scheduled council meeting, and we will have a preliminary budget at that meeting. And we also want to talk about the referendum question. And if the council is interested in seeing a referendum question, we can start to have that written up. And that referendum question would need to be approved by the council by August 17th. We need to submit it to the county by August 25th to be on the November ballot. I am looking at two separate budgets for the council's consideration. One budget would be assuming that either the council chooses not to go to referendum or that we have a failed referendum. And then the other budget would be what we would be taking to the electorate if we choose to ask them a referendum question on exceeding the levy limit. I am looking at incorporating a wheel tax into at least the non-referendum budget. I know obviously nobody likes any new taxes, but we're to a point now where in my estimation we need to take advantage of the options that are available to us, and that's one of them. With that being said, I would open it up for discussion at the council.
So we've set our benchmark of 20% as the low fund balance that municipalities in good financial standing receive AA bond ratings with that kind of.
Yeah, I didn't mean to mention that because Ed mentioned the former 25% fund balance goal, but we did reduce our goal in December of 2019 down to 20%. We currently, as of the end of 2019, we're at a little over 23%, so we're a little bit above that, and we've got some capacity to use that yet this year, but it's, that's not sustainable.
And that fund balance is 1.5 million, roughly?
Ballpark, yes.
Yep.
And I mean, maybe it's not a fair question, and I understand you if you need more time, but I mean, do you just have a general guess as to how much we'd take down that fund balance?
I don't, and part of the problem is we've been reaching out to the hotels for direction on what they're forecasting for the rest of this year and next year, and they have no idea, and they're not making forecasts, which is surprising. They got a budget like everybody else, but we're going to have to take a stab in the dark at that. And right now, the only information that we have is first quarter, which is January, February, and March. COVID really started to hit hard in mid-March, so that hardly affected first quarter. by the end of July, they need to have second quarter results to us. That'll be another piece of significant information that will help us project something for that next council meeting.
And ballpark, we were looking at 350,000?
You know, the last couple of years, that's what we've been looking at, but this is certainly going to be more significant than that, given the loss of hotel taxes, the inability of tourism to be able to give contribution to us next year, things like that.
$60,000 saving on, fire, but
Yes.
that helps, but it's, it's still going to be more.
Yeah, 60,000 on fire, 60,000 on pulling the fund balance to 20%.
But that's a one-year shot on the fund
Oh,
balance.
hey.
Yep.
You got development though, and I know development is, that revenue comes in years after, but you kick the can enough and maybe you get by.
Well, I think we got ourselves in a pickle because we kept kicking the can down the road and maybe we shouldn't have, I don't know.
I would disagree with that in part because it wasn't us that changed the hotel tax revenue.
No, it was not us. You are absolutely right. And I think it is just we're squeezed to the point. Yeah.
Well, it really was the change in law with the hotel tax and the adding 2 police officers. One other thing I mentioned, nobody wants to see us lose any of the staffing from where we are right now. I would contend that in an ideal world, our police department would have 1 more employee than what they currently have today, and our public works department would have 1 more employee than what they currently have today. The hard part of this equation, obviously public safety is the top priority, and so someone mentioned we don't want to see any loss of police and fire. The city really doesn't have the ability to cut fire. We have the ability to reject a budget and keep their budget the same as what it is, but we can't go backwards. The hard reality is the city doesn't have the ability to cut in the library. We don't have the ability to cut in fire. We really only have the ability to cut in public works, police, and administration. And public works and administration, most positions in those 2 departments are significantly funded by the utilities. So if you cut a position, you're not seeing 100% of that in savings in the general fund. Much of the savings you realize are in the utilities. So it's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish what we need to do without touching police, I think. And I think more than likely, what we would be looking at if we do not have a successful referendum to exceed the levy limit would be to cut 1 police officer, 1 public works employee, and between a half to a full administrative employee.
It's pretty draconian. I mean, I think we need to communicate the situation as plainly as possible to get the support from the community.
You mentioned the possibility of a wheel tax. The danger I see in that, as far as the non-referendum budget versus the referendum budget, is that we're going to tax you here, or we're going to tax you there. You know what I mean?
Well, we can't accomplish in the wheel tax what we'd like to accomplish in a levy limit referendum. It's partial.
But clearly, that's going to be a dollar amount that sticks out as what that revenue would be for proposed wheel tax, and then that's going to be, it's taking it off of the, we have to make decisions here, and that's why we're elected. So that'll be, interested to know what that number is going to be, and you'll present it in 2 weeks, right, or a week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
And we're going to be working, right up to the deadline of that meeting, to the point where I'm not sure how much we'll be able to get into the packet in advance, but we'll certainly try to get whatever we can in advance. But like I said, the equalized value from the state that comes out August 1st as far as a preliminary estimate. That's an important component of the levy limit.
And I wouldn't expect much in terms of federal state bailout to local communities. I would expect zero.
We'll get some money, some reimbursement for this year's expenses.
It's reimbursing for expenses over and above what we would have normally spent. Pretty fair statement, Tom?
Well, so there's two different programs. You got the FEMA funding and you've got the state roads to recovery funding. The state won't fund anything that isn't above and beyond your budget. So my time was budgeted for, and the fact that a lot of my effort was redirected towards COVID stuff, that doesn't matter. My time won't be reimbursable through the state funding, but my understanding is that through FEMA funding, it will be eligible.
And Lake Country Fire and Rescue, I think it was around $10,000, a one-time $10,000 under the CARES Act. CARES Act, I believe it was.
So the CARES Act,
Was it?
the CARES Act made a contribution to the state.
Mhm.
And the state took part of the CARES Act and created the Roads to Recovery Act. And I wasn't sure that fire departments were eligible for that. Maybe it's a different part of the program or something. But if I remember off the top of my head, there's a number allocated to each community in the state as to the maximum amount you're eligible to under that. And you still have to come up with eligible expenses, but if I remember correctly, the number that the city of Delafield is eligible for, and I don't think we've got this level of spending, I'm sure we don't, but I think it was $116,000, but I'm confident we don't have anywhere near that in eligible expenses.
The fire department did get around less than 10,000, but it was a one-time, and I don't know what COVID relief fund it came from, whether it was the CARES Act or something other. But it was a one-time $9,600
All right.
infusion.
I'll talk to Matt and Sandy about that.
Yeah.
Just one question I had for y'all is if we do decide to go with a referendum, just general thoughts on the idea of maybe having a special committee appointed that might help educate citizens on that referendum for a group of people that might be willing to serve in that capacity. Does that have any interest by the council or something you'd rather see just done by a third party?
Well, I think we need to be advocates, or I think
We would all be our own advocates, right? This is an idea to maybe get some other people to help with that process.
You know, I like that idea. They have a committee.
I think that's something we probably could bring up at the meeting in 2 weeks, because in the meantime, we could take a look at some, Arrowhead is going to be doing one, Kettle Moraine just had theirs, inquire how they did them, and if they did have a third party come in. I think they had their own PR person on the KM staff.
Yeah.
So that's...
I'm speaking of volunteers, right? Because it's been to hire some, it's money we don't really have.
We don't want to spend, well, we don't have money to spend.
I'm looking for volunteers.
I know if we spend money to sell me.
I do know KM did hire a professional marketing firm.
Most schools do. Mine's strictly volunteer, $20 a meeting type payment.
Yeah.
I think to piggyback on, I think Susie left, but and it's sort of tangential to what she talked about at citizens' comments, but the idea of answering questions or whatever, doing a public hearing, which I'm sure we would do anyway, but have, like, just folks can come in and talk about, why, how much, and how that impacts. I think that would be very important.
More than one.
Oh yeah, multiple, yeah.
We developed kind of a one-sheet handout to simplify things and get the word out for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful.
Anybody not like that idea?
Good idea. I think it's a good idea. Especially volunteer. Is there an interest?
We'll see how it plays out. I just didn't want to maybe start thinking about that road if there were people that didn't think it was a good idea.
Well, dovetails a little bit with what Jackie was saying, at least the committee. I don't know if you were looking at paid or volunteer, but I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Anything else we need to cover on this, folks? Okay, can we fairly say we did F and G there?
Yes.
Okay. Number 7, report of city officials. Mr. Administrator.
Yeah, a few different things. First of all, the 2020 street improvement program is substantially complete. The contractor did really nice work. I think Mission Road turned out really, really well. As Susie mentioned during citizens' comment, the 4-way stop sign is up. It seems to be functioning well. I did have concerns that sometimes you do something like that and accidents initially go up compared to the past history due to people just not being familiar with it and things like that, but so far it's working well. The Bleecker Street repaving went well, and then the other things we did was a little handicap ramp addition on Wells Street, and then the paving of the St. John's Park parking lot. Next 2 items relate to our bond sale. First of all, we had our Moody's rating, and in your packet you've got the press release and the credit opinion from Moody's, and they've reaffirmed our AA2 financial rating. And then also the sale day report is in your packet. And phenomenally, we had a sale of our notes with an interest rate of just over 0.85%. So that's a great opportunity for us to refinance some existing debt with that, and then also to get the additional funding we need for the capital projects the council did approve at a very low cost. And lastly, with regards to the sale, the premium that we received and the lower costs that were part of the sale allowed us to do a significant downsizing of the sale from $2.6 million to just over $2.4 million, $2.435 million. So very significant kudos for the city of Delafield, and we were certainly happy with those results.
Certainly has to be our lowest bond rating ever in history.
Oh, no, lowest bond rate.
Interest rate, I'm sorry, yes.
No, I don't think we've ever gone below 2% before. And we got phenomenal results in that we were 2 basis points lower than any other municipality that Ellers has seen this year. We were the first community to go below 1%, and we went significantly below. So that was good. Last thing I've got is in your packet. I've got the post-treatment inspection report from the chemical treatment that was done on Lake Negawicka this year for the invasive aquatic species. They identified that the treatment was 100% effective, and in place of the invasive species, they've documented high-quality aquatic plants taking their place throughout most of the area, except for Zastro Bay, which they indicated was recently harvested. So good results on that project as well. Any questions on any of those updates? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
7B, clerk.
Just looking for a discussion and action on the voucher list, please.
Move to approve the voucher list.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes?
And then the second item I have is just the announcement of my resignation as a city clerk. I took a position with the Village of Elm Grove, and will be starting there at the end of the month. My last day in office will be July 30th, next week, Thursday. I just wanted to take some time to thank the City of Delafield residents, the Common Council, and the city staff for bringing me on in 2018. Since then, the staff and I have made many improvements to the city services for the residents. Just wanted to highlight some of those so that people are still aware of what's out there. We expanded our acceptance of credit card payments. We cross-trained a bunch of our staff so that we can cover each other and help out. We upgraded our email and our internet over the last 2 years. We've made better use of our internal document retention software, which allows us to find things from the past a lot faster than we used to. We overhauled the term tracker format, making it easier for everybody to know when they are on a committee and when they're done with one. We made everything digital online for all the applications and the payments, which allowed us to work from home during COVID when other communities were forced to stay open because they weren't set up 100% digitally.
We reconstructed most of the website internally, saving us about $20,000 at the time when I came in. We removed that from the budget as not being used. We promoted the fish hatchery and made it more convenient to book reservations, created a fish hatchery website, and took a ton of photos outlining the greatness that is the fish hatchery. We have most of the meeting groups will go to digital with digital packet information, which reduced the cost of the printing that we had, which reduced toner and paper and all that kind of stuff. I was also able to redo the printing contract, which saved us $5,000 this year. We revamped the notification of the meetings, and we absolutely crushed it with elections. So I just wanted to give a special thanks to everybody who helped me make these improvements over the last 2 years for the residents, and I'm hoping that these things continue. So thank you very much, everybody.
And I'd like to thank you, Michelle. You've done an excellent job here. We really appreciate all the hard work that you've done, and we're sorry to see you leave. Okay, council requests for future agenda items. I have one. Just a reminder that we need to have the intermunicipality agreement for fire and rescue on the next agenda, August 6th, so that we can meet the timeline for all the communities to approve that and have a new Lake Country Fire and Rescue with potentially up to 8 members starting the first of the year. And each community has to approve those changes. We have to do it first as Lake Country Fire and Rescue, the agreement, and then the other ones will follow thereafter. Any other items? Seeing none, we will move on to correspondence. Village of Summit public hearing notice is in your packet, and the Arrowhead High School notice of referendum, November 3rd, 2020. Scheduled election is in your packet. Motion to convene into closed session per Wisconsin 19.85 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically, the city clerk and the deputy clerk. And I have a note here. Going into closed session, the mayor will assume the responsibilities of the clerk for the purposes of this evening's closed session, including the roll call vote to come out of closed session, the motion, second vote on a closed session topic, and the adjournment of the meeting. The clerk may be excused. Okay, now I'm ready.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second. You're up, Mayor.
Roll call.
Mr. Sloga.
Here.
Ms. Valdi.
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Valdi.
Aye.
Mr. Dean.
Aye.
Mr. Grimmer.
Aye.
Mr. Costin.
Aye.
Mr. Eicher.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, we gotta turn off our mics.
All aye. Okay. Everybody turn your mics off, just.
This is unlikely, but.
All right, okay,
Okay, great. Welcome back. We are out of closed
As
session.
soon as I'll make a motion to leave closed session.
Second.
roll call.
Yeah. You gotta do the note taking too. Okay, Mr. Sloga.
Aye.
Ms. Valdi.
Aye.
Mr. Dean.
Aye.
Mr. Grimmer.
Aye.
Mr. Kaysen.
Aye.
Mr. Eicher.
Aye.
Okay, all ayes. We are back into closed session, or open session. Okay.
I'll make a motion to give a $2,800 bonus to our deputy city clerk. One time.
Oh, okay, I'll second.
Jackie. Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Passes. Okay. Discussion possible action, and seeing no further business, therefore the meeting is adjourned at 9:08. Thank you very much.